Yes, guys, Suki BTS, and this guy needs no introduction in my eyes. This guy is, if I'm gonna take some off Milos, he is hashtag bodybuilding. I don't care what people say, it's Colossus Ken. Ken, buddy, how are you doing?
I've been good, man. I've been pretty busy since my last showing, from the Legion. So I recently moved to Texas. Actually, Wednesday will make it a month since I've been here. And just kind of digging in, getting situated and taking these next phases in bodybuilding for myself. So been pretty busy, with moving around and setting myself up. But we have a good spot here, training a destination now, and just
Nice.
now the goal is to bring it to the next level for next year. When you come in as a rookie, no one's expecting you to win, right? But your second year, it's like, all right, what's this guy doing? Like, we got to see some promise now. So I'm trying to set myself up in a way that I should be, ready to at least try and get a pro win or, within the next year and make it to the Olympia.
Well, look, let's reflect back on 2025. Going into your rookie year, what was the end goal that would mark your rookie season as a successful one?
So good question. The main thing I wanted was to, figure out where I stood as a new pro. So I wanted to be a first call out guy. Um, when you start bodybuilding, for people that don't know, if you're not a competitor, you get your pro card, you go through the gauntlet of the amateur ranks, you get your pro card, and then you're back at the bottom of the rung, right? And the question now is the pro card the end of the road for you, or are you an Olympia caliber athlete, right? That's the first section that you have to kind of challenge, that you kind of have to face. And for myself, I needed to find the answer to that question. So the rookie season was about figuring out what kind of bodybuilder am I going to be in the next couple of years moving forward? Am I a tier one bodybuilder that's going to be, a guy that makes it to the Olympia, every single year, start climbing that Olympia ladder, start with, if you make top 10 of your first Olympia, you're special, but start climbing that Olympia ladder, or you're a guy that wins a pro show every once in a while, or you're a guy that never wins a pro show. Let's be real. That's also a legitimate reality for a lot of pros. And I needed to figure that out for myself this early on. And I think based on my showing last year, I think I know what that answer is. And it's given me a lot of motivation, with this next season coming up to bring it to my fullest potential, in terms of where I can go with this sport.
So you kind of avoid answering my question then. So like this year then, what was the answer? Because I asked like, what would make 2025 a successful year? So I guess
Yeah.
let me ask you straight up. Has 2025 been a successful year for you in your eyes?
Yeah. So I wanted to be a first call out guy.
So
My
you got
goal was to
that.
make first call outs. Yeah, my goal was to make first call outs at New York. Legion, take that first call outs a step further. It didn't happen, but but I also still secured a first call outs at Legion as well, making the top five. So in my opinion, it was a success. I didn't go into the year, the early shows in the season, if you recall, Sass and Bonac were running the gauntlet. There was, top Olympians there. I was being realistic with myself. I'm not going to show up and just be the top Olympian, right? Like in my first rookie year. So I need to be able to at least stand next to them and compare myself and say, okay, in a year or two from now, this is what I need to work on to make myself stand amongst them, not just, the next tier below them. And that's pretty much what we did. That's so I would say it was a success. It was a big success. Um, you know, ultimately we always want to win. Let's be honest. Like we don't put ourselves through this you know, to make it and be a eighth place at a show. We ultimately want to win, but there's a realistic goal, and then there's a silver lining where it's like this is the best it's gonna get, right? And the best it's gonna get was okay, you can potentially win a show, but the reality or the realistic goal is to make first call outs.
I remember when I interviewed Sassarate, he told me something similar what you just said. Samson told Sass to not mess about with the small shows. Go to the big ones and see where you stand next to the top competitors. Get yourself next to William Bonac, Andrew Jacked, get yourself in front of Sergio Regan. A bit like what you did this year, you put yourself out there against the top competitors so you knew exactly where you stood. So, using everything you collected for 2025, do you now believe going into 2026 that an Olympia qualification is achievable for yourself?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. Yeah, I mean, I really do. I really, really think I can win a show next year. If I play my cards right, uh, you know, part of bodybuilding is also strategy, right? I'm not going to win an Arnold at this level, right? You're not gonna, if you make it to the Arnold, I'm not going to win an Arnold at this level, right? Or a Pittsburgh Pro where it's going to be, a top six Olympian. But you pick a right show, there is a potential that I can win, right? So I do believe that next year, like I said, the goal is to make it to the Olympia. The goal is to win a pro show. And part of moving out here was part of to set that up. I was, I didn't have access to the same kind of training facilities that my competitors were training at. Now I'm training at Destination, one of the best gyms in the country. Different things, as simple as the weather, right? You guys in the UK, you guys get no sun. You understand what I'm talking about.
I hear you.
The
I hear you.
winters is just prepping into winter is brutal. Um, and just being in a better place, there's a lot more bodybuilders around.
Yeah.
There's a lot more people like me in a better environment that can motivate and, push you to that next step. Jordan just won a show. Tampa and Texas, I see him every day, training, we're in the same gym. So it's like things like that. It makes a difference. You're no longer just that sole bodybuilder within 30-mile radius. You're just one of many, which kind of helps, it kind of motivates you a little bit more.
And you must take so much encouragement from seeing what Jordan has achieved this year versus like what he did last year, coming to this year, huge amount of improvements, and then to win two back-to-back shows. And now he spoke about as a potential guy to break into the top 10 at the Olympia in 2025. So not only you moving location, it sounds like the circle, the environment you have, it's just preparing you for something special in 2026.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. There's something happening down here in the Dallas, Texas area for new bodybuilders. If you're taking notice, there's a reason why a lot of us are kind of moving out here and coming out here. MJ has really built a an environment that a younger bodybuilder or a newer pro can really thrive in. There's a lot of support, and just being able to feed off each other, train with each other. Information is power. And just being around each other elevates it, right? So look at Jordan and Justin, as a good example. Justin just being here, by virtue of Justin being here and being his training partner, look at where that took him to the next level, right? So it's as simple as being your training partner. It's as simple as seeing, prepping for the same shows in the same gym. This guy's is in condition. I better step on the gas. I better make sure I'm doing my cardio, the way it needs to go. So there's a lot that's going on down here. It kind of feels like, I don't want to say that's a loaded statement to say, but it's starting to begin to feel like it's like a Venice for the newer pros. A lot of newer pros that turned from like 2021 to like 2024. A lot of us are moving down here. Joe's already said he's moving down here as well. So it's like it's becoming a haven for the newer guard, so to say.
I want to look back at a pivotal show for yourself. And I say yourself, it was more of the Bible world, how they perceived you. And that was the Legion show, your second show, where you got top six. Look, I'm not going to beat around the bush and we're not going to go over old news. But what was the biggest thing you learned or you took away from that show that's going to make you a better bodybuilder going into 2026?
Just keep fighting. Just keep fighting. You see it a lot on stage. You come in, you go through the group comparisons and prejudging starts. They call the first call, they don't call you. And you can just look at the competitors on the line, when you come into second call, sometimes you're pissed off, you start to fade, right? Like your emotions also determine what your physique kind of looks like. And for me, I'll be honest, I knew what I brought to Legion. I know what my physique was. I know where it should have stood. So I was like, I'm just gonna come in here and show my best, regardless of where I place. I'm gonna show my best and keep fighting. And it was very tough because, I had flown out. That was my first show that I'd ever done where I was completely alone. My girlfriend
Okay.
wasn't there with me. My coach wasn't there. No friends, nothing. I just flew to Vegas on my own, Reno, and just showed up, right? Just showed up to this show and I didn't know anyone. So it was very tough for me, to go back to your room after prejudging, just you by yourself sitting there and just yeah, you're not in the first call out. It's like, dude, why did you even fly halfway across the country to do this damn show? But what I learned, you hear it all the time, where it's like you may not make the first calls, but if you keep fighting, they will give you a chance. And I tried to make sure I had that perspective. Your emotions, keep your emotions in check. You're a professional, you have a job to do, present your best package. And whatever happens at the end of the day, whatever it is, we'll take a look and see. And I came in, ended up coming fifth at that show, which was good, which was good. So I think the silver lining to that experience for me after facing that, and like you said, it was a pivotal show, is I don't think that that's an experience that I'll probably experience again, moving forward. Being that now my face is a little bit more known, amongst the judges, amongst the bodybuilding scene. So I'm not someone that's going to get lost in the mix, so to say, as long as I bring my best package, to the show that I'm competing at.
Do you mind if I ask if
Mhm.
look, we saw what social media was like. I remember seeing that first video. I can't remember who posted it, but it was just like, oh my God, this guy Ken is looking absolutely outrageous. Do you think if you were in that original that first call out at Legion, do you think you would be given a shot next to Tonio who took the win? Do you think there could have been an opportunity that you could place higher?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Now, 100%. I mean, look at it. It's all statistics, right? Look at every single show. I'm not the first person this has happened to, right? It's not, it's something that happens once in a while in bodybuilding, but you typically will see when that happens because there's still a scoring system, right? So going from second call outs, and then finals, the rejudging, your points are a little too far behind, right? It's just too far behind of points to make up where they may not give you that chance to stand next to the top three, right? So that's what happened to me. A lot of times you'll see like those people end up in fifth, at best fourth. It's very rare, but you won't get that chance to stand next to that top because you weren't even in the first call outs, the final comparison for the first call out. So I do think that if I was, it would have given me that ability fight my way um, through that first top five group, and then they would have a better comparison of comparing me to a lot of the physiques on stage. Because Tony and I we're very similar in physiques. Um, he's very round, bubbly. I mean, Legion, he looked amazing. Tony looked amazing, but we have very similar qualities, in our physiques. So I think that's something that they would have at least given me an opportunity if I was, within that first call out group during prejudging.
But looking ahead to 2026, you mentioned that you could see yourself winning a pro show, maybe not an Arnold, but when it could, obviously that was in your words. 2026, how do you go by picking the right show or the show that you want to target? Is it based on timing in the year, or do you have your eyes set on certain shows where you feel you can make the greatest impact to secure that Olympia qualification?
Man, Suki, that's a great question because I've got a funny word. I always say strategic bodybuilding, but realistically, the way this pro league is showing up right now, man, it's gonna be tough. Unless you're going to Mexico City, a new show. All these shows are stacked, my friend. You know, um, for myself, I have to look at it two ways logistically. So one is costs, right? I was in Jersey. New York was close to me. It's a New York Pro. It's a big show. It's a tier one show. I wanted to do that, and I was also close by. So, I don't have the luxury to compete at any show I want. I have limited PTO. I work like everyone else. So right now, my the way I'm looking at it is between one, how much improvements can I make this off season coming up? And will that give me enough time to, cut down, get super peeled, and then step into a show? So it's gonna be between the Tampa, hopefully Chicago's back next year for the
Yeah.
Open. If it's back, I'll probably do a trio, Chicago, Tampa, Texas. And since I'm already here in Texas, it would be financially more logical to do it that way, and it'll give me more time. But if not, then I may want to pick an earlier show in the year, which would be pretty much the same thing I did, which would be New York, and then probably Legion or maybe throw Cali in there. Um, but we still haven't decided because the off season it's literally been a month and a couple of weeks since we got off stage. So the off season is still we still haven't even gone into a full off season to kind of determine where we're gonna go. But it's gonna be between an early show. If it's not early enough, then we're gonna have to just pick kind of the last shows before the end of the year.
Was that the reason why you didn't carry on with your 2025 season cost? Because I want to throw it back out there. When like social media was, yes, Tonio won leadership, but there's a lot of social media backing for yourself, saying, "Wow, this guy is brought such an improved package from New York." What was the reason for not carrying on your 2025 season? Because it did feel that there may have been some potential momentum going in your favor.
Yeah, two things. I mean, I try to keep it transparent. PTO, I work, I have very limited paid time off. I can't just take time and go. So my PTO ran out. And I'd already used a lot of time for competing, back to back. And then I had flown to the Arnold earlier in the year and a lot of stuff. So I didn't have a lot of vacation time left for work. And then the second thing was, again, if I'm out of PTO and I'm actually going to take the time off to actually go to these shows, like that's going to be completely out of pocket at that point.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm still a newer pro. I'm not I'm not poor, but I'm not rich either. I'm just a regular guy like everyone else. So financially it has to make sense where if I'm gonna show up to a show, then there should be some return coming back, at that level after you've already done two shows. If you just keep going and you know nothing's coming back, everything is just coming out of your pocket, then it's like you may want to start to evaluate. And then the third was we had already planned this move to come here to Texas, So right after Legion, my lease from my old place was up. So I had to pack up and be out of there, move here, and then to continue prep with all that going on with those two factors already was kind of like, I think it's time we just shut it down and move forward, to the next phase.
So you're in maybe a similar position then with a lot of maybe the pros who've got into their rookie year where either they're in full-time employment or they're also need to be mindful of the cost side of bodybuilding. So you mentioned about, you have to think about the time off and work around your day-to-day role. What are you doing in the moment then to maybe try and give yourself more financial backing to support someone like you who is a high prospect that we could see of Olympia next year? I mean, are you doing anything at the moment to try and secure new sponsors? Are you in talks with maybe new brands that could actually give you that support, that financial backing?
Yeah. And I'm glad we're touching this subject because people don't realize that there's a completely different side of bodybuilding. You could be a top level guy, but you could have no sponsorships. There are people like that in our league today, top 10 Olympians with no sponsorship. So for myself, I'm diversifying. So of course, social media is the name of the game, right? So doing a lot more with social media. That's why you see I have a YouTube now that I've been
Yeah.
pushing, doing a lot more of that. Some sponsors also has to make sense. I'm a very transparent person. So if I'm gonna have a sponsor, I use their products. I like the products. and it makes it easier from a business standpoint, you know. So I'm in talks, but for the kind of sponsorships that I want to look for and to use, uh, it's got to make sense logistically, right? It's not just about the pay. So that's the other thing. And then the third, you know, I don't announce it like that because my time is very limited. But I do personal training, you know, one-on-one online training, but I have very limited clientele. Just because I feel that if you're going to pay me to do something, then my time should be invested into that for you, you know, as hopefully in the future, as you know, my bodybuilding stock and everything I'm doing about it starts to go and my time frees up a lot more, I can elevate a lot of those things, you know, those the time that I'm putting into those things. The problem is just, you know, we're not kids. Like you can't put 20, 40 hours and, you know, not have a job and then you're making like $1,000 a month over here, you know. So you just have to be realistic about how you where you put your, you know, versus your turn, so to say.
No, I think that's why I want to ask that question because I just feel it's such a relevant point and something that you already alluded to was the fact that,
Yeah.
you know, it's people may think, pro open bodybuilder that it must all be rosy. You get all these sponsors and you're financially sorted. You can just stay home, go to gym, come back, eat
Yeah.
your meals, and repeat. But I spoke to so many competitors, not just open bodybuilders, but even bikini competitors, men's physique, or paramedics, nurses, IT engineer, that they do have to balance this, and it's all about being savvy and smart around your finances.
That's what I try to convey to people, you know, because like you said, there is that there is that thought process where people think you turn pro and automatically you're rich overnight, you know. The magazines are gone. Like no one is getting publication deals, you know. We don't have any kind of infrastructure in place from a league where it's not like you're not like bodybuilding's on TV and then they put you in for endorsements and stuff like that, you know. So a lot of this stuff is the money coming into the sport is still based on, you know, social media and outside of social media, the competitions itself, right? So you just have to be smart with how you play this game as a bodybuilder, especially when you're a newer pro coming in, because it's so easy to say, I'm going to put everything and redline my credit card and be in debt and I'm going to be Mr. Olympia in 2 years. And it's like that's not how it works, you know. And that's why I really like Samson because Samson was one of those people that kind of put it out there. It's like, hey, I lived in a one-bedroom apartment for many years, even as a pro, you know, before I started winning pro shows. And to see where he's at now after he's made it to the Mr. Olympia, and you know, Hostile gave him that chance, and that was what took his game to the next level. It's a story for many people, you know. It's not said a lot because on social media, you know, people are sitting taking pictures beside Lamborghinis, and it's like, bro, you don't own the car, you know what I mean? Like, so there's that fake notion, and I just think we just have to be more transparent with the reality of what this is, especially for the women's side of bodybuilding. um you know, I really really applaud a lot of women. You know, there's not as much money in it like the men's side and like men's open. So for you to do bodybuilding, you know, as a woman, you really, really have to love it, you know. And yeah, it's just the reality of the sport. It's not anything from the top brass or, you know, this person, they're not doing this. The reality is bodybuilding is a niche sport, you know. It takes a lot for the common person that doesn't understand what we do to look at that and say, I'm interested in that. I think that's cool. That should be on TV. It's very, very hard, you know, to kind of put that out to the main public. So it's no one's fault. It's just the way the sport is as a whole, you know.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. Well, look, Ken, I really do appreciate your time. So I'm so looking forward, mate, to 2026. I mean, mate, like I said, and I'm sure you saw on social media during Legion that you look absolutely terrific. I can't wait to see the improvements you bring next year. I do believe 100% we're going to see you at the Olympia 2026 and you are going to secure that first pro win. And I do hope as well, when you do that, that a domino effect takes place and we start to see more sponsors want to back you to going into that Olympia next year.
No, Suki, I mean, I appreciate it, and I hope so too, But I do want to be, I do want to come out there and say I'm also in a very privileged position
Yeah.
compared to a lot of people. Animal, Gasp, Chicken Pound, Elevate. These companies take care of me.
Massive,
You
massive
know,
companies.
so they take care of me, and I understand that I'm very fortunate compared to a lot of people. But at the same time, as a bodybuilder, the goal is to keep getting better, to keep getting better, keep improving. And if this is the sport that I love. I want to be able to do it, you know, 24/7 without having to detract from it. So the goal is, to make it to that Olympia stage. And I think we can really do it next year. And I do want to say, I do want to thank you guys because at the end of the day, I did put it on social media, it's a different age. With everything that happened in Legion, the think people like you, people like Body Without Borders, online presence, online media, you guys are what promote this sport. Without you guys, the sport is dead. Let's be honest. You guys are the ones that generate that conversation, and that's what brings the interest into the sport outside of competitions. So I do want to say that the sport has grown as a whole because of all these different facets of people, the competitors, the promoters, and people like you, right? Online journalists and online media that is kind of bringing this in. So keep doing what you're doing, man. I really like what you're doing. I know you're bringing out the YouTube now, and that's why I wanted to come on and make sure that I can at least support you in any way I can. But I think that you guys are a very important part of the infrastructure sometimes that people don't appreciate because without you guys, as much as sometimes like, some pages may try to generate, controversial stuff, there is no conversation without a lot of that stuff happening. So keep doing what you're doing. I'm a big fan.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Ken, for your time. Cheers, mate.